Well, my name is Ryan Tudhope. I am one of the co-founders of Atomic Fiction, which is a studio that is based out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and we also have offices in Montreal and Los Angeles. No, it's amazing. It was such a pleasure to be a part of something that people enjoy so much. Our dream is to entertain people and make people happy, and when we get to be paired up on a project that does that, it's just a dream come true. The overall visual effects supervisor, Jonathan Rothbart, is a really close colleague of mine. He was one of the owners of the orphanage, which is where I spent about 9 years of my career. And so we know each other really well. And as soon as I found out that he was going to be joining the project, I called him up and expressed my enthusiasm to be a part of it. And Jonathan is a really amazing visual effects supervisor and really has a great eye for this type of film and this type of action, and is a huge comic book fan. And I knew that him paired with Tim, who I also knew of and had spoken with in the past and knew had been developing this property with his team at Blur Studios, it just had all the makings of if nothing else, just a really fun project to be involved in. And so we were super enthusiastic about that, and got involved really as soon as we could. There was a couple sequences that Jonathan had sort of earmarked for us, knowing what our strengths were. And so right off the bat, we sort of knew what the sequences were that we were potentially going to be helping out on, and were able to start having those conversations pretty early on. The leaked trailer really was our first view into what Tim's vision for the sequence was, and it looked amazing and everyone loved it. And so the bar was set really high right off the bat. And as it relates to what our work was in terms of creating this freeway environment, it's a freeway, so it wasn't like we were creating an alien world or something that had a lot of fantasy components or anything that really was something that we had to spend a lot of time imagining what it was going to be. What we had to do was fall in love with what a freeway is all about and really embrace the design and the architecture that goes into it, and all the details and the grittiness and griminess of it, and sort of figure out how to be inspired by those things, because if we weren't, we would never be able to push this world into a place where people were either tricked into thinking it was real, or at the very least create a world that was, in spite of being a freeway, was still interesting and really cool to look at. So we spent a lot of time studying, I think, what makes up this world that we're all so used to seeing, but don't really ever have a lot of time to spend just literally looking at or staring at, because we're always rushing off to something else, or we're kind of driving by really fast. That was a decision that we made pretty early on, and it was really, I think, driven by Tim and Jonathan, that we didn't want it to be a stylized world. And in fact, the leaked test footage was a little more stylized. There was this sort of dramatic scale to the overpasses, and the density was a little more kind of compressed, and there was again sort of a stylized take on the art direction there. Our approach in this situation, they wanted it, because there was a live action film that we were living within, right? They wanted it to feel as real as possible. And so our approach then was to reference as much real stuff as we could, but still try to cherry pick the very best of sort of the world that we could find out there, and apply it, so that from almost a production design standpoint, we picked the coolest looking overpass we could, and the coolest camera, and the coolest buildings and layouts, and we sort of really spent a lot of time art directing the world. Even though it was meant to feel real, we tried to make it the coolest real we could. Well, I think decisions like that always start as a creative choice, where in this case, I think Tim and Jonathan both felt that the sequence that they had prevised, the sequence that they had envisioned, was going to be very difficult to shoot. And so you start looking at what concessions you might need to make you start adding in the other factors, like is there safety considerations, like are we actually going to be able to do these shots and not hurt anyone? Are we going to be able to pull this off in the budget and time we have? Is there even a location that we can shut down long enough to sort of own this freeway and shoot all these things? So there's a lot of sort of real world logistics that get in the way of the creative when you're trying to sort of push the limits or do something that's sort of as action heavy as this was and had all the elements that Tim wanted to get into the sequence. So for all of those reasons sort of combined, everyone started to realize that the right approach was probably to do a lot of the exterior shots full CG. But we did look at a lot of other options. We looked at shooting the background plates without any vehicles as an option and then doing CG vehicles. We also went to Detroit and shot background plates on a big stunt car with 6 red Epic cameras all set in array, and shot huge panoramics going down the freeway with stunt cars and backgrounds, and the intent was to use those for a lot of the backgrounds as well. But ultimately, for all of the full CG exterior shots, it was a really exciting moment when we found out that that was the approach we were going to take, because as you said, we knew that we were going to pull off Tim's vision 100%. There wasn't going to be anything that really got in our way at that point other than time and our ability to actually pull it off. But you sort of remove a lot of the logistical considerations and the safety considerations, and suddenly you have the ability to craft, whatever sequence you want at that point. Well, I think we approach those situations with cautious optimism. You have to be confident that you're going to be able to do it, but you have to realize that it's going to be hard, and that just like anything, there is that uncanny valley. There is that sort of last 10 or 15% that's very difficult and very time consuming and easy to stall out on and not be able to push past. And so I was very aware of that concern going into this, and Jonathan and I talked quite a bit about it. And I remember having conversations with him early on where I said, look, I know we're going to get this up to 85%, no problem, not a concern. It's the last 15% I'm concerned about, so let's attack that now, and let's get the reference we need so that we can rely on something to push us to the next level, so that we can compare our work to something we know that we both agree is real, and take us all the way, because it is a challenge. The other thing that I think really helped us in this situation is that we were in a lot of ways building upon the look of the film at large and the amazing work of both the director of photography and Tim and all the production designers and everything they were doing on the other locations and the other parts of the movie. So we really relied on that as a guide for how to light our scenes, for how they should feel in terms of the camera moves and everything, because we really wanted our sequence to fit into the grand vision of what the movie was, rather than be this standalone thing that sort of we were, kind of trying to create ourselves. It's really about serving the greater purpose of the movie. And so any chance we had to reference decisions that were being made elsewhere in the film, that was also hugely valuable to us. We'll see, we did about 250 shots between 2 sequences, the freeway chase and Deadpool Counts Bullets. Both occur pretty early in the film, pretty much right off the bat. Our team size was about 150. And we were on the project basically from about March 2015, I guess, right? Through early January 2016, so basically about 9 months, something like that. And the real, the principal photography actually took place sort of during that spring and early summer, and then they did some additional photography, I think as late as November. So the early part of the project was really ramping in a lot of meetings, a lot of talking about how we were going to do this, a lot of the gathering of reference and inspiration and art boards and concepts and things like that. So the ramp in it takes a little bit of a ramp in, and then the full crew sort of comes on, and we start really working for the last 4 or 5 months on the project. As for software, we do all of our modeling and animation in Maya, and rigging as well. And then we do all of our effects in Houdini. And then our back-end sort of lighting pipeline is Katana, with V-Ray. And the way that I decided to split this project up as it related to our two studios is to put all of the front-end animation work in our Oakland studio and back-end work as far as lighting and compositing and a lot of the look dev was done in our Montreal studio. So we created sort of this front-end, back-end split team where we would work on designing the shots and getting all the animation working, and a lot of the effects sort of rigid body simulations were done in California, and then the files were cached over to our Montreal team, would pick them up and start lighting them and working with them, and then our comp team, which, and by the way, they use Nuke for comp. You know, Tim is really obviously an amazing creative. He is very familiar with full CG and animation and the process of visual effects. He's also just has an amazing eye for motion and for action and for staging scenes. And so I think, where I really learned a lot on this project was, I think, his guidance on how the character should move, how the shot should be set up, how to stage all of the action, and, you know, sort of that overall direction of the sequence itself. He just has an amazing eye for that. He also just embodied Deadpool and just was so, you know, he was such the right director for this film, and had just been thinking about it for so long and working with his team on it. And there really was a very singular vision of what we were all trying to do, which I really credit to him and his mastery of this world and understanding of this character and all that. Jonathan, you know, as the visual effects supervisor, he and I just have a really strong familiarity with what each other prefers, and sort of this interaction that I think really helped us out, because I really could tell where he was at, or his head was at, or if he was happy with something or if he wasn't. You know, because we're colleagues and friends, it was really a fun experience, but also I think it helped the work that we were able to talk so frankly with each other about where things were at and what we wanted to do. Ryan Reynolds is amazing. I mean, he, you know, I only interacted with him when I was on set a few times, but he so clearly took this character, you know, to the next level and really took it personally. I mean, you could really see that he wanted this film to be as successful as it ended up being, and really put all of his heart and energy and abilities into making it successful, and was a huge part of the collaboration between the writers and Tim and everyone. It was very clear that he was a major contributor to why this film is so successful.